Hi, I'm Tim Storm. I'm here with Ironcenturion, and we're at Defender Outdoors today about to get this scope mounted finally on the rifle project. And I'm here with Daniel. And Daniel, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what we're going to be doing today.
My name is Daniel. I'm the armor here at Defender Outdoors, and I'm going to show you the professional way to correctly mount and bore sight your scope. I have a Ruger Precision here. I have a Vortex PST 25x50. I have a American Defense quick detach rings, and I also have a Vortex scope level. The first thing what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you have the right rings for the scope. And the way you do that is you need to find if this is a 1 inch, 30, or 35. Those are the most common measurements for scopes. A lot of people like to come up and buy the wrong size tubes for the rings, and that's a big problem. But here we have everything set up correctly. The first step that I'm going to do is put the actual scope level on there. It'll be a little difficult if you do it last, and from that point on, it's just as simple as 2 bolts to attach it. I'm going to put it on the front here. You want to keep this relatively loose because you are going to need to level it to make sure that when you are shooting it, you got the correct thing. So what I like to do is just make it a little snug to the point where it's not going to vibrate up and down, but you can still move it. I wouldn't worry too much about being super tight. The coating on these scopes are really durable, so I wouldn't worry about scratching it too much. But over here I got a Wheeler engineering kit, and this is a scope leveling kit, which I find very, very handy. So what I'm going to do is then I'm going to tighten this ever so slightly where it likes to keep its place, but you can still move it by hand with a little bit of force. I'm going to put it on the top scope now, and I'm just going to level the scope, and I'm going to level the scope level to it. You want them as close as possible because this little Vortex bubble level will help you in the mounting process. Just intricate little turns because it's a very precise instrument. So once that's level over there, I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down. There's not a specific torque measurement you need to because this isn't structurally holding on to anything but the scope. One of the things that I like to take care about is when you are tightening it, you want to make sure that both sides are evenly distributed. You don't want one side squeezing on the other because then it just looks horrible. That's not what we're going to learn today. Right, the second thing is just roughly put it on the mount. It's pretty straightforward. On a cantilever, which is offset, I don't know why that happened. On an offset, you want to make sure that it's going to, first off, that the levers here are not interacting with your bolt hand because you can cut yourself racking it back really fast, and you want it opposite. You also want to make sure that it's facing forward. You don't want something like this. So upon that, we're going to place this back on here. I'm going to place the scope. I'm going to place both the drop the screws in. Make sure you got it oriented in right. There we go. And at this point, you just want the screws to screw in so it can hold itself together. We're going to be leveling it on the weapon. Alright, so the scope is roughly on there. It's very, very loose. So what I'm going to do is, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go towards the weapon itself. First thing you want to do, obviously, is clear the weapon. The weapon is clear. Alright, so I'm going to place this on a flat spot on the gun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to level the gun first. So once I have it approximately level, this tool is really, really handy because it fits any type of barrel, and what it does is it indexes itself and you can adjust it to wherever you need to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the barrel. I'm going to tighten it. make sure the gun is level. Then I can adjust the screw and it'll raise the bubble level. And so now my weapon is indexed at its level. So I can remove this and put it on the scope. After this, you're going to open the levers on this and you're going to roughly put it on the weapon. There we go. So now that this is roughly on there, we can actually get to the part where we actually start to level everything correctly. Constantly, we want to look at the bubble level to make sure that the gun is always level. At this point, you just set the level on the scope cap, and I'm going to screw these in to the point where it's going to be a little hard to turn. So now that we have the scope on, we're going to make sure that the scope is properly leveled, and this is the part where we're going to start torquing it down and making it tuned to the gun. So I have my little level right here. It's level, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my scope cap. So it's pretty level compared to the barrel. I can probably adjust it just a hair. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the scope is snug, but not super tight to where it's holding the scope intact, but enough to where I can torque it just a little bit and make sure it's on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it just a little bit until they're both on center. And that looks about right. At this point, then I'm going to get my torque wrench. I'm going to usually put them at about 25 or 30 inch-pounds. After that, you're going to just hear it click. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the actual mount is very secure to the weapon. That's as important as the rings. So we're going to first take this off. And the front one's really tight, but the back one is kind of loose. I'm going to take a small screwdriver. Alright. The way you adjust this particular mount is that the screws in the back, you take a flathead and you can push out the mount, and you can actually turn it to how tight you want. So the back one needs to be tightened just a little bit more. So that's pretty good right there, so let's try that. That's perfect. You don't want it gorilla tight, but you do want it to where it's tuned. It's very important when it comes to accuracy. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you have the right amount of eye relief. So doing this, making sure that the weapon is clear, you're going to shoulder it, and I'm going to make sure that the scope has an equal amount of scope shadow to it. I don't want to be super up on the scope, and I don't want to be too far back. And I lucked out. This seems like it's the perfect distance from the eye. So at this point, make sure everything's tight and overlook every aspect of it. So making sure that the gun is level, just double checking. Bubble level is level, the scope is level. And it's always good to check it with your eyes, because you can always be a little bit off and your eye can catch it when this or this could be off. After that point, everything's been torqued down. Everything's been torqued to specs and locked down. At this point in time, I would bore sight it and then send some rounds downrange and make sure that it's on target.
Awesome. So tell us, why do you want to get this done professionally, maybe not do a DIY approach?
One of the major things is first off, you want to make sure that the optic is suitable for the rifle. If you got a lightweight optic and you're shooting it on a 50 cal, you can break the optic. Another thing is you want to make sure that the height of the scope is correct. On this rifle, you have a pretty decent gap between the rail and the scope. A lot of people will mount them and have the scope touch the rail, and when you shoot, the recoil of it will actually break the glass inside the scope. Another aspect is if you don't properly torque these down, or the mount when you're shooting it, you have at the very least accuracy problems, because the scope can turn or it can lose its zero really easy. And at the very worst, the scope can actually come off and hit you or hit anybody else, and you can break your optic. Along with that, if you're going to do anything precision, it's very crucial that everything's tight, everything's honed to the weapon. Otherwise, you're not going to get any group at all. It's going to be all over the place. Another point of professionalism, if you noticed, I put the scope equally in the middle. I wanted to make sure that when you look at it, everything looks symmetrical, everything has the perfect amount of gap between the cone, between the mat for the bubbles, and that has the correct length for here. Make sure that the scope eye reliefs, just so that when you get onto it, it feels like it's a part of the weapon and you don't have to outstretch anything strenuous to use the scope for the weapon. That's one of the major parts of getting it professionally done, is everything's right. And that's how you get good groups, that's how you get a good season in hunting anything, is that everything's right, everything's comfortable to use, and you don't have to worry about anything being wrong. That's mainly that's the exact reason why you need to do it professionally and not to do it while you process.
Excellent. So just so you guys at home know, you can come to Defender Outdoors here in Fort Worth. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, they'd love to hook you up with getting your scope mounted. And Daniel, thanks again for your time, and we really appreciate your help today.
Absolutely, Tim.